Hi, it's Marie, and it's the end of August, which means it's time for another book haul. Um, I have around 23 books, I think, this season that I've acquired or hauled or whatever in some way. But there's a pretty even split this season between physical books, ebooks, audiobooks, and library books that I borrowed. So that's great. I haven't just gone out and bought 23 new books that I have to find space for. So in that way, it's been a success. Let's get into it with the library books first. First, I borrowed Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This was a like paranormal urban fantasy romance between a woman who was I think she was a vampire and he was a werewolf. So there was like a arranged marriage sort of situation between them to like form some kind of alliance, I think. Yeah, I don't really remember much about it. I didn't get very far, like I said. I think I only got maybe like 20 pages in and then I put it down because I knew I wasn't going to like it. Then I borrowed Dragon Rider by Taran Matharu. This was one of my anticipated releases for the year, actually. And I did finish this one because it was a really fast read. I gave it 3 stars and liked it enough. Like, it was okay. Like, it wasn't bad. But I did think it lacked in some ways. This was a book about I think a teenage boy, I think he's about 17, named Jay or Jai. I can't fully remember. And he is the son of a previously executed warlord who was in a war with the country that Jay now serves in, basically as a slave caring for the former emperor. Things go awry. He ends up having to escape the royal court with a dragon egg and ends up on the run with a maidservant from a neighboring country who had come to this new country as part of a marriage alliance with the princess. So they go on the run, get into all kinds of trouble. It was okay, like I said. It was very... it had some pacing issues, I think. It sort of dragged a bit in the middle, but it wasn't bad. I think it would actually be a good one for people who are maybe trying to get into fantasy for the first time, or are transitioning from YA fantasy into adult fantasy. I think it's a good bridging book in that way, but for someone who reads a lot of quite complex fantasy, maybe not the one to pick up. I then grabbed When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is a romantasy about a young woman whose name I can't remember. Rave. Her name was Rave. And she's like an assassin of some kind who gets caught up with I think he's like a fae prince. I didn't quite get that far. I didn't finish this one either, but I did get maybe 120 pages in, so I did try. This one just didn't quite grab me. It was taking a long time to get things going, but I did like the world building and the lore that went into it. I don't feel like you see that very often in romantasy books in particular. I also grabbed Saga Volume 11 by Brian K. Vaughan. This is the latest graphic novel in the Saga series, which is a science fantasy about this family who is basically on the run in the galaxy because the parents were from opposite sides of a war. They met, they fell in love, had a baby, and now that baby is like a intergalactic symbol of peace. So people are always trying to like track them down and take them out. I liked this one, but not as much as some others. This volume in particular, made me feel like I was ready for the series to start making progress towards some kind of resolution, because I feel like now we're at a point where we're seeing it spin its wheels a bit more, and we're sort of doing the same thing over and over and over again in every volume. After that, I grabbed The Brink by Holden Shepherd. This is an Australian YA novel about basically a group of school leavers who, after they finish high school, go off to Leavers Week, or School Leaves as we call it here. And they end up on an isolated island off the west coast of, well, Western Australia. And things start going wrong because there are a bunch of different people from different groups in this larger group, and tensions are running high and they're building. People are discovering things about other people that they didn't know before, and then people start dying. So in that way, it's sort of like a YA thriller, and I really liked it. I thought this one was great. I then grabbed Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a dark academia novel about a woman named Alex who ends up at, is it Yale? Might be Yale. Harvard? I don't know. I think it was Yale. One of those like Ivy League American colleges. And she gets brought in basically to act as a supernatural protector for the secret societies because she can see ghosts effectively. I didn't get very far into this one either. I was struggling with it. I didn't love the alternating flashback, flash forward structure of it. I didn't feel like the flashbacks were helping the overall narrative, but also it felt like it was really slowing the book down. And my last library borrow for the season was Evocation by S.T. Gibson. Haven't started this one yet at all, so I barely remember anything about it. I believe it's about a man who is somehow related to or interacting with like death, like the spectre of death or something. And he has to go to his ex-boyfriend for help with this situation, but the ex-boyfriend is now married to a woman, so she gets involved somehow, and then I think it becomes like a polyamorous relationship, but not like a connected one, like one of those like where there's one person in a relationship with two people, but those two people aren't in a relationship with each other. One of those is what I think it is. I grabbed 4 audiobooks this season. The first one was the Morningstar graphic audio by Pierce Brown. This is the 3rd book in the Red Rising series and like the last book in the initial Red Rising trilogy. The series does continue after that, but I mean, you could just read the first 3 and that would be a complete story on its own. This series is about a young man who starts when he's 16, but he becomes a young man named Darrow, and he is he's a red, so he's basically like the lowest of the low in society. He's a miner on Mars, and he basically lives to serve the upper echelons of society, ruled by the Golds. And one day, like, his life basically falls apart and he gets recruited by a rebel group to be remade into a Gold and then infiltrate them and take them down from the inside. I then got the first 3 novels in the Memento Mori series by C.S. Poe. So that was, in order, Madison Square Murders, Subway Slayings, and Broadway Butchery. There is another book coming out as well, I think called Hudson River Homicides, but that's not out yet. It is supposed to come out sometime before the end of 2024, but I don't know exactly when. But this is a series about a cold case detective named Larkin, and he, in the first book, gets brought into an investigation that involves a skeletal body being found in the Madison Square Park, and there is an old, like, Victorian, I think, Victorian? maybe older, a death mask found with the skeleton, and so he connects with a forensic investigator named Doyle, and they basically become partners throughout the rest of the series, and work together to solve a bunch of cold case crimes, which by the end of book 3 we find out are somehow connected and being fed to Larkin in particular. In terms of ebooks, I got books 3, 4, and 5 in the Big Bad Wolf series by Charlie Adhara. So in order, that's Thrown to the Wolves, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing, and Cry Wolf. Overall, I really enjoyed them. I particularly enjoyed book 4. Books 3 and 5 were a bit weaker, I felt, in terms of pace for book 3, and like the mystery in book 5 wasn't quite up to the same standards as I thought the previous ones had been. But book 4 in totality was very strong, I thought. This is a series about a guy named Cooper Dayton, and he is a special agent with the BSI, the Bureau of Special Investigation, which is a specialized branch of the FBI that deals specifically with werewolf crime. In the first book, he is partnered with a werewolf, Oliver Park, and they basically become partners throughout the rest of the series. Then I grabbed the first 2 books in the Nightingale and Courtney series, which were Leeward and The Devil to Pay by Katie Daish. Again, I didn't know what I was getting in for with this series. I randomly saw it recommended when I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I decided to try the first book and then read it in like a day. This is basically like a queer historical romance set in the 1800s, I think the early 1800s, and it's about Captain Hiram Nightingale, who serves in the Royal Navy. And at the start of the first book, basically he loses his crew and his ship in a battle, and effectively suffers from PTSD. And then a couple of years later, he gets sent to, I think Jamaica or the Caribbean somewhere, to fill a specific political post there. But when he arrives, he finds that he's been detoured into serving as the captain of a ship that needs to go out and look for another ship that has recently mutinied and basically disappeared. And on this new ship that he's captaining, he meets his first lieutenant, a man named Arthur Courtney, and they start off, their relationship is a bit rocky for various reasons, but over time they build a lot of trust and respect for each other, and they fall in love too. Final ebook I grabbed was Coffee Boy by Austin Chant. It's actually more of a novella than a novel, but it's about a trans man whose name escapes me, named Kieran, and he basically starts interning for a political campaign in Texas after his former college professor invites him to be part of this team. So he arrives and he meets a very grumpy campaign strategist named Seth, who nobody realizes is bisexual. I think he's bi. Nobody else in the team knows that he's bi, but then Kieran arrives, and as soon as he gets there, he's like, oh hey, you have this huge crush on my former college professor and nobody else can tell. So they sort of bond over that. And now the physical books. We'll start with Fence Challenges Longshot. This is the latest installment in the Fence graphic novel comic series by C.S. Pacat. It's basically about a fencing team at a boys' boarding school, and it follows in particular a boy named Nick, who for various reasons is trying to improve his fencing and like be the best of the best. It also focuses on his roommate slash rival slash slow burn love interest, who's a boy named Seiji, and he is ranked number 2 in the world. And he's also trying to be the best because he's trying to beat the boy who is number 1 in the world, because they have a rivalry sort of situation, but it might have been more in the past. Hard to tell. I picked up Peter Darling by Austen Chant. I actually read this earlier this year as an audiobook, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. So I decided to get a physical copy so I could reread it at some point in the future. This is as you might have guessed, sort of like a Peter Pan continuation, but the Peter Pan character is a trans man who, if you know the original story, you had the Wendy Darling character and you had Peter Pan, but in this one, Wendy becomes Peter, so it's like female to male. There's also a relationship between Peter and Captain Hook, who also, his backstory and his character is explored a lot in this book. The rivalry that exists between them, the relationship that develops between them. It explores a lot of Peter and the Lost Boys and what that relationship is. I just really enjoyed this book. And I wasn't expecting to. I almost DNF'd it, and then at the last minute decided to give it one more chapter to turn things around, and it really did. I ended up with a new copy of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros because I went to a Rebecca Yarros In Conversation With event in Melbourne in July, I believe it was. And because I got a particular ticket, I got a new copy of the book, which is signed, which is quite cool. If you've been living under a rock, Fourth Wing is a romantasy about a young woman named Violet who basically is forced to go to Dragon Rider school, which is literally like a fight to the death, because a lot of the students don't survive. And she's already disadvantaged because she has a physical condition that makes her bones weaker. So it's not looking good for Violet. But while she's there, she meets another Dragon Rider cadet named Zayden, and he is the son of a former rebel leader, and obviously they fall in love. I acquired If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane. This book... Bit of a funny story. I actually bought this book. In fact, I bought this copy for my friend Beck for Christmas last year because often we do like a Christmas book swap, and we'll send a surprise book to each other. And I decided to send her this one because I've read a lot of Vari McFarlane novels and I've liked most of them. And this is my favourite one. It's about a woman named Laurie who is dumped by her long-term boyfriend. And then in order to make him jealous, basically, or to like prove that she doesn't need him or she doesn't care, she ends up like fake dating a man named Jamie who works in her law office. So it seemed like the kind of thing that Beck might be into. I know she likes to break up a lot of her longer fantasy reads with like a romance novel, a contemporary romance. So I was hoping she would enjoy this one, and she did not. I asked her if she would send her copy to me because she was unhauling it, because I originally read it as an audiobook and I don't actually own a physical copy. And I really wanted to because I think I would like to reread this one at some point. So this is that. And the last 2 books are very exciting for me. So the first one is Brother Song by TJ Klune. This is the 4th and final book in the Green Creek series, which is about basically the Bennett family who move back to Green Creek, Oregon, which is a very small town, like up in the forest in the mountains. And the Bennetts are werewolves. and they sort of bring trouble with them to town, and end up pulling a couple of the humans in Green Creek into their orbit and into their family, primarily a boy who becomes man named Ox. And finally, my most anticipated release of the year, The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. Casey McQuiston wrote Red, White and Royal Blue, which is one of my favourite books of all time. And The Pairing is their latest release. The Pairing is a book about Theo and Kit, who were childhood best friends, grew up, fell in love, became lovers, and then broke up. And now it's 4 years later, and they're estranged exes, and they both end up going on a European, tour that they had booked when they were together. But now it's going to expire, so they decide to go separately. And then when they arrive, they realize that the other one is also there. And they decide to set a little bit of a wager on who can sleep with the super hot, tour guide first. But at some point, I think they probably reconnect and fall back in love and get together themselves. I have to assume, because that would make the most sense. I'm really excited to read this book. I can't wait. I hope it's good. Even just thinking about it makes me excited. So yeah, that's my most anticipated 2024 release. I just want to pat it lovingly. And that's it. Those are the books that I acquired during the winter months, from the start of June to now, the end of August. Thank you for joining me to go through my book haul. I hope you're doing well wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye!